Hello everyone, my name is Kathy Gonzalez and I would like to do my theory project in humanizing music learning in the classroom. Who am I as a teacher? I have my Bachelor of Arts in Music and I'm currently a student in Cal State Long Beach's teaching credential program getting a single subject in music. I'm not only a future music educator, but I'm also currently a private music instructor. I teach students from primary level elementary school to adults, and students that also have learning disabilities, and students are also English language learners or even bilingual too. As a secondary music teacher, I don't only just want to teach my students music, but to acknowledge the uniqueness that each student brings to the classroom. So recognizing that every student that comes into my classroom have funds of knowledge from their experiences in their life, and to value that when they share that in the classroom, that their value, their ways that they see how life is, their experiences should be seen, valued, and affirmed. Teaching music through literacy. Music is known as the universal language, regardless of its instrumental, in the different language that's not your mother tongue. People are able to find ways to connect to a song. And even if it's not 100% understood, they can be able to tell how someone is expressing it. And also, as I teach music through literacy, students are not just only reading sheet music and reading the notes on paper, but also learning about the stories behind the songs that we play, behind the songs that we learned about. What is the meaning behind these songs? When were these songs composed or created by the people that made them? And also the composers. What was happening during the time that the composers were composing these songs? What was going on in their life that inspired them? And as well, what was happening around their area, their community that inspired this? So students also learn to create or compose songs, analyze songs such as distinguishing any patterns where parts of music repeat, or even learn how the song was formed from beginning to the end. And also as well, how is music expressed when it's played, when it's written. And a great way for students to also showcase themselves as people and as musicians. And also applying what we learn in music in the classroom through literacy and connecting it to real life. So as you see the pictures in this slide, I have pictures of Mr. Wynton Marsalis, who's a very known jazz and classical trumpet player. And here below, he is with Japanese conductor Seiji Ozawa. So both of them work together to be able to teach students, that is our main audience, on how to connect learning music with real life. A great example that Marsalis teaches kids when it comes to learning about tempo is bouncing a basketball. You go at the steady beat. When you bounce a basketball faster, your speed increases. And when you start slowing down bouncing the basketball, your tempo starts to decrease or go slower. This series has a really great way of showcasing visuals for students to be able to connect music with real life stuff that they can apply to their lives and outside of the classroom. A great way as well to also learn music through literacy is when Marsalis and his jazz band play a certain song in the jazz style, and then you have Mr. Seiji Ozawa with the orchestra playing that same song in the classical style. This really shows that even though they are both groups are playing the same song, they can be interpreted differently in different genres. And through that, students can learn literacy by seeing, oh, these songs in different genres can be interpreted differently, and showcase as well a way of expression, and even also ways that students could even try to learn to make their own arrangement if that ever becomes something that they would be interested in. How to humanize teaching music in the classroom. These are ways that I'm looking forward to humanizing teaching music in my future classroom. We'll start with incorporating critical response and sustained pedagogy. So besides learning just the usual songs that are from European composers and more in a classic song genre, I would like to incorporate different music genres into my classroom, and as well even learning music where English is not the main language. So that way my students can learn from each other, from their own backgrounds, getting to know one another, and how maybe their own communities see the world in their own set of eyes. To also connect together, to be able to somehow bring some unity where we can learn more about each other. And also, it's a really great way for my students to be felt seen in the classroom, and knowing that their cultures and the music from their background is seen as valuable to teach in the classroom. And also, students will be able to have a voice in the classroom. Let's say we're building our repertoire for the upcoming concert, choosing some songs. This is a great opportunity for my students. If they have a song that together they would like to learn to perform, I will get that option for them and see if it's also around their level, but having them the choice to be able to decide as well as a classroom what we can work on together. Also, for students to be able to have opportunities to be leaders, whether it's having each student be assigned to do a classroom task, or even just leading a small group of their peers, whether it's doing sectionals, if a group of students play the same instrument or sing the same voice part. And also for transfer students, let's say we are going over a topic and I give the opportunity for students to be able to teach the class and show their expertise in what we were learning, and giving some really great skills that they could also apply not just in the classroom but in their other classrooms and also outside of music class, as well as social and emotional learning. We all know that music's a really great way for people to be able to connect to how they're feeling with their emotions, and also for students it could be a great way for them to themselves to be able to learn and figure out if sometimes it's hard to put into words what they're feeling. Sometimes finding that right song could be able to really help them express to know how are they feeling at the moment, or to be able to know what they're going through and be able to process that. And also it's a really great way, of course, for socially. When students have a certain common interest, is a great way to build community, especially if they're in band class or in choir. Music's what's bringing them together. And also it helps them to learn more about the world around them, especially if it's learning from a different culture than theirs. And also a great way for them to also connect their lives outside the classroom. There may be music that describes just what is going on in their own communities or their own personal lives as well. And as much as it is great to be in the classroom learning, there are moments that I do want to recognize that students may have some stressful moments in the classroom. So I want to make sure in my classroom, students have different outlets to be able to take a moment to, whether it's stepping outside the classroom or maybe in the class, having some outlets to help them out in case they feel overwhelmed or just need the time to de-stress meanwhile. And also having those areas designated in the classroom to have that. And of course, whenever they're ready, they're always welcome to join the classroom whenever they're ready to do so. And also teaching students the mental struggle that comes with learning music. This is something that I noticed I was starting to learn a little more during my undergrad time. Sometimes when it comes to playing the song, and you might not have some confidence to play it, it's noticeable even if it's not verbally said. But let's say you try to sing a part or play a part, and you know it's a part where you struggle, sometimes it could be easily noticeable just by hearing it, even though it's not verbally said. So a great example I would like to point out here is this picture below of a young boy that's playing the song on the piano. He has the song completely memorized. This character's name is called Kosei Aria for the anime Your Lie in April. He's playing the song on the piano that he has completely memorized. But even though he's playing the song from memory, this picture here, it looks like he's underwater. And this shows very well just how his mental state is as he's performing there's so much going on in his mind that he's not fully focused and he can't hear the notes, as he likes to describe just his mental state. And I think this is a really excellent picture of just being aware that this can be something that some of my students might have this challenge when it comes to learning music. And as a teacher, I know it's my responsibility to help them and guide them if they are going to be going through this obstacle when it comes to learning music. It's great, of course, to be able to play a song from the beginning to the end, but there are moments where learning can be the struggle and mistakes happen. But that's something that we value, because when you're making mistakes, and especially if you're noticing it, that's a good sign. That's able to say, hey, I'm recognizing it. And also there's also improvement being showed. And so as a teacher, I want to remind my students that there are going to be moments where learning music is going to be challenging. But the good thing is they don't have to stay there forever. I'm there to guide them and be emotional support that they need. Incorporate learning for all students. So ways that I would like to incorporate learning for all of my students in the classroom is especially getting to know them, their likes, and especially their interests, and incorporating that into our classroom material. Let's say we're learning about notes and rhythms. I would like to use something that they're familiar with, such as using fruits to describe that. We'll go an example with apple. Apple has 2 syllables, and that's a great way for me to explain to students on notes that are broken that way. And let's say if there's something else in music that I would like to teach my students, if they have a favorite video game, a show, an anime, a series, I could find ways to be able to incorporate that, so that way if students are having trouble of learning material in the classroom, but I know what their interests are, that can really not just help me as a teacher, but more importantly, help my students to be able to understand the material and to see that they are actually learning, not just learning it, but also understanding what is being taught in the classroom. And also displaying a variety of ways for students to learn and showcase their understanding by following UDL. So each student has different ways that they learn best. Some are visual learners, some are hands-on learners, some are audible. And as a teacher, I know it's my job to make sure that I show different ways that my students can intake information. Not everyone learns the same, but it's important to make sure that there is no obstacle that's preventing them from learning, and to also acknowledge that each student learns differently. And let's say also that we have a project coming up, and I want to make sure that my students are able to showcase to the best of their ability and also show their creativity as well. Not every student's going to want to do a presentation on music about Latin America. And so that gives me, as a teacher, to make sure that I give my students different ways to showcase their learning about a project that we'll be doing. Let's say music on Latin America. It could be about a certain country and artist. Students that are best at writing and showcasing their material and what they learn, they can write an essay about it. They can make a song if they want to, or create a song. They could draw a comic strip or just about the topic in general. Whatever it may be, I want to make sure that my students have freedom of choice to be able to showcase what they learn in class, and also that I can see how they are learning the material and that it is going very well and for them understanding it. And also my job as a teacher, I know I'm doing my best. And also, let's say for some of my students in my classroom, I might not be sure if my teaching ways are going through. And let's say for my students that might have IEPs or English language learners, I might not know everything about it to be able to make sure they're understanding well. Or sometimes I just need some extra help. So to make sure that my students are also learning, I also want to do my part to talk to my fellow colleagues, to talk to my students' parents or guardians to have a better understanding how they intake information. And sometimes I'll have to improvise, and their ideas can be able to help me to make sure that I fit my lessons around my students and not just on my own desires. So these are great ways that I am looking forward to incorporating learning for all of my students when it comes to teaching music.